Hello, critical thinkers. We are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. First and foremost, before we get into the interview, if everyone can please do me a favor, please like the stream, share the stream with someone you love or care about. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps with the algorithm. Many of you have told me that you have not been getting alerts about my upcoming videos, about my live streams. So it's important that you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification, and then select all so that you will get all the notifications and know when I go live officially. So for those of you who may not be aware, Sarah Wallace with NBC4 New York has been covering cases of murders and abuses at the hands of correction officers in our New York State facilities. One of the cases she's covered is Juan Rivas, and we actually have Juan's wife here, Marie Martinez.
Rivas.
So Marie, say hi to the people.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
So I am going to give just everyone a very quick summary of what's occurred with Juan. So before Robert Brooks was brutally murdered, Juan Rivas was savagely beat twice by the hands of correction officers. A few of those correction officers involved in the Robert Brooks homicide were involved with the brutal beating of Juan Rivas. This case follows a lot of the similar characteristics that other cases have followed as well, in terms of falsifying charges, saying that the incarcerated individual attempted to assault a correction officer. You have throwing the person in shoes. So these characteristics that occur in a lot of these stories, you will find in the story of Juan Rivas. So first and foremost, we want to give a special shout out to Sarah Wallace with NBC4 New York for having the coverage, for having the courage to coverage these cases in mainstream media. So if everyone could please do me a big solid and in the chat, write SW for Sarah Wallace. That would be a great help. Please write SW for Sarah Wallace and let's give her her props. Okay. So Juan Rivas was brutally beaten, psychologically and physically tortured, and also violated SA. Okay. So some of the details might be very graphic for people. So as much as I want to keep everyone on, some people may be triggered by what they hear today. And views is one thing, but caring about yourself and your mental health is first. So if this kind of material triggers you, if it brings you back, many of you who watch have been incarcerated, have suffered some of the same abuses that Juan has suffered, have seen incarcerated individuals be beaten. This might not be the live stream for you. No harm, no foul. Go and take care of yourself. So I will say that when telling the story, we have to go deep and go into the specifics, and sometimes it's hearing things that we may not want to hear, but that's the reality of the New York State Department of Corrections, and this truth has to be told, and it has to be out there for the world. So first and foremost, Marie, thanks again for being on. I really appreciate you
Pleasure.
being here. And maybe if you could tell us how you and Juan met. Is there a story that goes with that?
There is a story. I used to visit my uncle a lot at Eastern Correctional Facility, and one day I was having a conversation with my uncle and my sisters at the visiting area, and Juan was actually sitting with his mom. But something that you notice is that the age difference sometimes within visitors, some older ladies, are with younger men, in the visiting area. And, they're actually, in a relationship. And I asked my uncle,
Okay.
hey, how, why is that the case? And he's like, that just is, sometimes that's where you just find, love. And I said, oh, okay. And then he goes, why do you ask? And I said, well, that gentleman right there, he's with an older lady. And, and he's hugging her and kissing her and, playing with her hair, not kissing her, sexually or whatever, just, kissing
Yeah.
her and giving her lots of love. And I was just like, what is going on? And, he looked really good. And I was like, this is what's going on? And my uncle goes, I don't think that's his wife. And then he yells across the room and is like, hey, Rocco, is that your wife? And he goes, no, that is my mother. He's like, I
Oh,
love my mother. And when my mother comes and visits me, I'm going to show her all the love and appreciation she deserves for all the hours that she has to travel on the bus.
mhm.
I'm showing my mother all the love. And then from there, it was just, every time my uncle called, I would sneak in a conversation with him. And so it just, letters came to visits came to us, being in a relationship. And we got married after 2 years. We've been together for 8 years now,
Oh, eight
going on
years.
9. Mhm.
Okay. Nice, nice. And can you maybe talk to us about just Juan's experience with docs in terms of has he like these incidents occurred in Marcy, but has he been in other New York State facilities?
Yes, he's been in a Clinton. He's been in Cayuga. He's been in Mohawk, in Franklin. He has another situation in Franklin where the officers, they left their post unattended and he was attacked.
Oh
They
wow.
he literally, and then they threw him after they did that. They did it actually on purpose, and then after they did that, they threw him in the back of a van for several hours. And when they took him to medical, they noticed that he had a punctured lung, and they had to actually helicopter him out of um,
Wow.
of Franklin. Um, so that was another incident where he was in the hospital for several days.
Wow. 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 Okay. So when did Juan start having issues with the correctional officers at Marcy? Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry to I'm sorry to in fact, let's go back because you mentioned he was in some other facilities. Did so besides from that incident with the officers leaving their post and then him being attacked, was there any other problems with any COs in other facilities before he came to Marcy?
he's more of a stay to himself kind of person. So, um, he would see it. He just would never experience it. So he
Okay.
didn't have those type of incidents because his mission was he wants to come home, and so he
Yeah.
feels if he's not, you know, in their way, then they won't find a way to have him in a situation, and so he didn't
Got it.
experience. He saw it, but he didn't experience it.
Okay. So is it safe to say that when he was in Marcy, this was the first time that he experienced some sort of harassment or brutality from a
Yes.
CO?
Yes, yes, yes. He said that when he wasn't even in Marcy that long, to be honest. He said as soon as he got there, the people at commissary says, we take your stuff to see how you're going to act. So
Mhm.
basically, they were taking, our loved ones' commissary, taking whatever they wanted, just to
So
see if
you're saying the COs were taking his commissary
not
to see how
his,
he would
not
react?
not
Not
his,
his.
not his, because
Okay.
again, they, I guess they knew who to do it to, and so they were taking but they had an orientation where they stated, this is a hands-on, we take your commissary if we want to take your commissary, and just to see how you're going to act, and they were doing it to a lot of people.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about his interactions with the COs, and because you
Mhm.
had mentioned that he had gotten beaten twice
Yeah.
when he was in Marcy.
So due to the incident in Franklin, he has had issues, with his lung, and so it makes him go to urinate often. So if he has to go
Okay.
to, like, it's not something that he can hold, he would have to go, and so he had put his ID on the table, and the CEO kept saying, "Well, your ID is not on the table," and he had witnesses saying, "Why are you playing with this man? His ID is on the table," and they kept on and
Yeah.
on and on. And he said, if you keep on, if you urinate on yourself, you're going to be urinating on yourself for life, because I'm going to make you urinate. And he's like, so, my husband was like thrown aback, like, what what did I do to you? If I'm telling you it's in my medical files that I have to go to the bathroom, then I have to go to the
Yeah.
bathroom. And so he had said something to him, nothing threatening, just like, why are you saying it like that? Like, what do you mean? And so the guy pulled the pin. But that to me was all staged, um, because for you to come there and just want to mess with him that day, um, and kept saying his ID was not on the table. It's like if you
Mhm.
was trying to stir something up. It was like if
Yeah.
it was already staged to mess with someone, or to even to mess with him, particularly because they just took it out on him that day. And so they took him to the back. I think it was like a hearing room or something to that effect, and they beat him. They had him sitting on a chair for 6 hours, no food, no clothes, just whatever he had on. They took his shoes. They started hitting him with his shoes. He got so desperate at a point where he saw a phone, like on the wall, and
Yeah.
the chair that he was sitting on was it's like one of those desk chairs. So
Yeah.
he attempted to get up, and the whole, because in his mind, he was so desperate that he was like, I'm going to get to that phone. I'm going to call 911 using my nose.
Yeah.
And for someone to think in that manner, then you had to be so very, very desperate, where you thought you were really going to be harmed. And when he
Wow.
fell, he made such a ruckus because the handcuffs got tighter. And so they ran in and they beat him again. They sat him up, and they told him, if he didn't stop calling my name, that they were going to mace him, and they were going to leave him practically burning there for more hours.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back because you said a lot. You said a lot, and so maybe I want to go back to the point prior to the officer pulling the pin, right? So prior to the officer pulling the pin, your husband was attempting to go to the bathroom, to use the bathroom. He had a conversation about his medical files and that this is his situation. And so was there any physical contact before the officer pulled the pin?
Nope,
So did Juan threaten this correctional officer? Did
nope,
he slap him? Did he spit
nope,
at him? Did he?
nope,
Nothing happened.
nope, nothing at all.
And
Nothing at all.
so this officer then you stated that he pulled his pin.
Yes. And
Okay.
then they came and they dragged him out.
Okay. And about how many correctional officers came with that altercation?
I'm not sure. I believe he has said 4 or
Okay.
5, but I don't want to misspeak. But I think it was 4 or 5 that came
Okay.
and picked him up, and Farina
So
was one of them.
Farina was one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. And for Farina, and so Anthony Farina. So for those of you who don't know, Anthony Farina is the officer seen in the Robert Brooks murder, in which he shoves his foot on Robert Brooks' genitalia. He also, I call him a special kind of demon in terms of what he does. He shoved a rag, what appeared to be a rag. Some have called it a like a Clorox wipe.
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure what that was. Shoved it down his mouth and choked him
Hmm.
and choked him. So that's who Anthony Farina is. That's who Anthony Farina is. So Anthony Farina was involved in this first
Yeah.
incident with Juan.
Mhm.
And the first time this happened, just in terms of like a chronological order, this happened in December or prior to December 2024?
No, this happened. The first incident was on September 24th.
Okay, so this happened September 24th, 2024,
Correct.
correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And so the officer pulls his pen. Anthony Farina was part of that group
Hmm.
that came,
Hmm.
along with some other officers.
Correct.
Then they come and pull him and drag him
Yeah, they
and bring
dragged.
him where exactly?
Um, I think he was calling it a hearing room. I'm not too sure
The hearing room. Okay.
what it's called, but he said a hearing room. Um, but then I started getting texts from other inmates saying, you need to call, something is really wrong. I can't really tell you what's going on, but something is really wrong. You have to call. And I'm calling and calling every single day. They're telling me he received an incident report, and I'm like, an incident report for what? They're like, oh, we can't tell you that. He received an incident report, and now he's in observation. I said, what type of observation? They're like, we can't tell you that either. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? I am on all his HIPAA forms. I also
Yeah.
have power of attorney. I want to know where my husband is. And they're like, oh, he's in observation. He's in observation. He's in observation. Every day he was in observation. Then
So,
one
so, so basically, you called the facility
every day.
because people were calling you, reaching out
Mhm.
to you to
Yes.
let you know that something happened to your husband, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you're calling every day to find out about your husband's status. And
Yes.
so, how long did you keep reaching out to the facility before you knew what had happened to him after that first beating in September?
My husband called me on October 4th. From September
October
24th
4th.
to October 4th. That's when he
So
called
it
me.
would so he was being September 24th, and then October 4th was
Was his first
he
phone
reached
call.
out to you, and that was
Yes,
the first time he was able to make a phone call.
correct. That's when they
And
threw him in
now
the shoe. He with nothing, basically nothing. He had no sheets. He had no clothes. He had no personal belongings. They just threw him in the shoe with nothing. No writing stuff. No stamps. Nothing. They gave him one phone call, and so
you
he
didn't have
called.
a tablet?
No.
No. Okay. So going back to that hearing room really quick. So he's in the hearing room. You mentioned that he's in a chair. He's handcuffed to a chair.
Yes. Yes.
And okay. So is his legs restrained as well?
Yes.
Or he's
Yes. His legs and his hand. Yes.
wow. And he was beaten inside this hearing.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned that he attempted to make a call. He thought he was going to call 911.
He thought in his mind. I guess
Mm-hmm.
desperation makes you do desperate things, and that was his desperate. He said that when he was being beaten, that he kept calling my name and my phone number, in hopes that another incarcerated individual would hear and actually make the phone
Okay.
call and say, this is happening to me. I knew something was not right, but I couldn't get through to someone who would actually tell me this is what happened. Everything was he was in observation, up to a point where they said, "Oh, he's in Elmira." And I'm like, how is he in Elmira when the system says he's in Marcy? Oh, well, we had to take him to Elmira for more observation. So when will he be back? And they're like, oh, well, it takes 10 days. So those were the 10 days. He didn't call me until October 4th.
Okay. So was he in Elmira during this time?
He was in Elmira.
He was in Elmira.
I'm not sure how many days, but he was in
Okay.
Elmira. Mhm.
And you said he was in Elmira for observation. I guess there's like medical facilities
Uh,
better
I'm going
or
to I'm going to assume so. He said he saw he saw a nurse in Elmira. He told the nurse that he could not go back to Marcy, that what he told them what had happened to them. He even told, I guess, some captain or sergeant over there, and they said that there's nothing that we can do. He belongs to Marcy, and so that they had to send him back to Marcy. They didn't even attempt to call OSI. None of that. He told them, I cannot go back. I cannot go back. These people are trying to kill me. And
So he actually told the captain in Elmira that he was attacked.
He told a higher up. I'm not sure if it was a captain or a sergeant.
Okay.
He told one of them, I cannot go back. I cannot go back. Please don't make me go back. He's pleading with them, and they said, you have to go back.
Wow. Okay. And so did he or anyone from the family like file an official grievance with OSI by any chance?
So on September 24th, when I started getting those texts, I sent an email out to the commissioner, to several people. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I sent several emails out, and I made several phone calls every single day. Every day I was like, my husband still has not shown up. Someone needs to tell me something. What is going on? Who is responsible for telling me what's going on? Direct me to the correct person. No responses, no nothing at all. On October 4th, when he called me and finally told me what had happened, I again contacted OSI, the commissioner, the governor, everyone who was anyone was on that email. In addition, I called back and I spoke to the case manager, supervisor, and I told her, why were you lying to me, telling me that he was in observation when he was getting beat the entire time? And you probably knew, and I don't have that type of information. We're not privy to any information that's going on. I said, but you're a counselor. You manage his case. So I don't understand how you didn't know that this was happening to him when you manage his case. It's your responsibility to know. It's your responsibility to contact their loved ones and say, this is what happened to him. He's in medical, especially if we're on his form, this is what's happening. This is medical, this, that, and the fourth. Shortly after, that was on October 4th when he called me. On October 6th, his mom went to visit. And, when he left the visiting room, he went upstairs and they gave him a ticket. And he's like, what is this ticket for? And they said, we found contraband we found a weapon in one of your books. They had given him one book the day before. And all of a sudden, there's a weapon inside the book after he goes to visiting. So after he goes to visiting, he comes upstairs and there's a weapon. So he has an incident report for a weapon. So I again contact OSI, the commissioner, again, telling them step by step what is going on. Marcy needs to be investigated. These people are harming our incarcerated individuals. Who is going to show up? Every day. I think it was October 8th, 2 days after his visit, OSI goes and visits. And so while he's interviewing with OSI, they're like, OSI is like kind of behind him on the door window and behind the OSI guy, and he's saying, look, like, turn around, like, these people are threatening me through the damn door. You have to get me out of here.
So the OSI officer, the OSI investigator was in the cell with Juan, and behind the OSI,
I don't know if it's a cell or wherever it is that they take
cell. Okay. But then you had a correction officer threatening Juan
through the door. Yes.
Through the door. Like, now when you say he was threatening him, like what was he saying or doing, or hand motions, or?
I think it was all hand motions. I really didn't get into that conversation with my husband, but he said he was literally threatening me through the door. I'm telling this OSI, you have to get me out of here. I'm not going to survive another night. Like, these people are trying to kill me. Call whoever you have to call, but you have to get me out of here. And the OSI was like, calm down. Everything's going to be all right. They're not going to do anything. This, that, and the fourth. While my husband is walking out, and they're walking him back, he sees the OSI having conversations with the COs, like chimmying it up with them, laughing, and like nothing had happened. So right then and there, he knew that nothing was going to be done, and that he was going to have a bad night. And that's when when he went from OSI, he went back into, they were bringing him back to his cell, and he noticed that none of his stuff was there. He didn't have any paper.
Wow.
They took his paper again. They took his pencils. They took everything. And so he put his hand in the shoe to summon, one of the COs. And I think it was the CO Bliston, who's on the thing. He kicked the door, and the thing shut in his hand and broke his hand. So the window, because he put his hand in the door, he got mad because he put his hand in the door. He kicked it. He started kicking it really hard, and I guess it shut and broke his hand. And so that same day or same night, I think it was the next day, they came to pick him up, saying that, oh, we're here to pick you up because we heard that you were saying that you were suicidal. And he said, I never said that. And he said, well, we need to take you to, to mental health. So we need to take you out. He said, I'm not coming out until you guys put on a camera. And so they left. And then when they came back, he saw someone with a digital camera, and it was on. And so he said, okay, but I can't get cuffed. I can't get cuffed from the back because you guys broke my hand. And that day they had taken him to the nurse, and the nurse said that there was nothing wrong with it. But when they took him to the hospital, they said he had a fractured, that his hand was actually broken.
Wow. So he went to a nurse in Marcy, and the nurse said his hand was not broken.
There's nothing wrong.
There was nothing wrong with his hand.
No. Which is crazy. So when they took him out, they took him into a strip fix room, and they kind of like picked his pants. He was handcuffed through the back, because they refused to cuff him through the front, because they said, you already lost that opportunity to cuff in the front when we came the first time. So we don't care if your hand is broken or not. We're going to cuff you through the back. When they took him to the first room, they uncuffed him from the right hand. In the incident report, they said that he used his right hand to punch a CO.
And his right hand was the broken hand?
And that's the broken hand. That he used his right hand to punch all of these COs. They were kicking him. Kessler was punching him really hard in his ribs. Kessler is the one who did the damages to his ribs. The ligature mark was Farina. He said that he was kind of holding him with something around his neck. He doesn't know what it was, but he was like literally grabbing him through the back from his neck. He said every time that he would kind of like faint, once he got up, they would do it again. Just continue.
This sounds very similar to a couple of weeks ago. I've had Ruby Rivera on a couple of times. Her nephew, Christopher Quiles, was in Mid-State Correctional Facility, and he was beaten the day before Messiah Nantry. And it's a similar type story in terms of saying, he spun off the wall. He attempted to elbow a CO in their face. And he was beaten several times and would wake up from being unconscious, and then once he would wake up, they'd start to beat him again. It's sort of like wash, rinse, and repeat. They would continue this cycle.
It's funny because I didn't hear about it until the Friday after the 9th, which was the 11th, I believe it was.
Mhm.
The chief surgeon called me and said, "Hi, I'm the chief surgeon at Wynn Hospital. I'm calling to let you know that your husband was assaulted. And so I'm calling to let you know that he is going to need emergency surgery. We're going to have to plate his ribs because they are not they were basically irreparable. So they
Oh,
had to kind of put the metal clamps on him so that his ribs did not shift because they were like, you know,
shoot.
um, and so um, they did not want anyone to call me at all. They did not allow him a phone in the room. The nurses and the everyone in the hospital kept saying they had to contact a family member. They refused. They were not giving me any information either at the prison. I kept calling. They said he's in observation all the way up until Friday. He was in the hospital from the 9th, and all the way up to Friday, every time I called, they said he was in observation.
This is the date that his beating occurred, the
Was the 9th.
second. This is October 9th.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did not find
Okay.
out until October 11th. Not even from the prison.
And so you're saying how you found out about it was the surgeon
The surgeon called me.
contacted you directly. So when
Mhm.
the surgeon contacted you directly and told you, maybe tell us again exactly what the surgeon told you, and tell us like what was your initial reaction when you heard it?
So he said, "Hi, is this Miss Rivas?" I'm like, "Sure, yes. How can I help you?" And he said, "Hi, this is Chief Surgeon from Wynn Hospital." I forgot his name. He was like, "This is from Wynn Hospital. I'm calling to let you know. I'm sorry to let you know that your husband was assaulted." He used those words, assaulted. Your husband was assaulted. I am not supposed to be calling you, but I'm calling you to let you know that, we have to do emergency surgery on him. And I said, "What type of emergency surgery?" Because now I'm like, he was like, he has a punctured lung. The ribs actually punctured his lung again. So,
Wow.
because they were so, when ribs break, they're going to pierce something. And so,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
punctured his lung. He had a tear in his liver too. He had a small tear in his liver. He had
Oh,
ligature marks, like if he was really, really trying to hang himself. But again, that was Farina when he had the he was grabbing something from behind. He said he doesn't know what it was. It was some type of thing that he was holding, but it was literally choking him.
so Anthony Farina was using something to
Yes.
choke
Yes.
choke your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't know
Wow.
exactly what it was, but he said he was using something. It
Oh,
wasn't his
and
hands.
gotcha. Oh, and by the way, I just saw a comment that popped up saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I take that back." Someone had a comment saying, "Sorry for your loss,"
Oh,
but that comment may have been about someone else in the
oh,
chat.
okay.
So just sorry, disregard that. But so everyone knows Juan is alive.
Yes.
Juan is alive. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Continue.
So once I got off the phone with the chief surgeon, I'm on my way to work and I come off the train because I'm very weary about Albany numbers. And so,
Yeah.
and I hadn't heard from my husband. So I jumped out of the train to take the phone call. And then it's this guy, it's the surgeon. And when I get off the train, I try calling back. And they're like, "Oh, we can't give you that." When you call back, they're like, "We can't even tell you that he's here. We can't even tell you if that's the person that called you, because he
Hmm.
is an incarcerated person." And I got
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, "But he called me." I'm trying to call him back to get, because now I'm like, I didn't get to ask him all the questions that I wanted to ask him.
Yeah.
And so out of the blue, he calls me back again. And he's like, "I'm sorry to, I was rushing on the phone, but he's about to go in now, and the other surgeon, once he's done, they're going to call you and tell you how the surgery went. And so they had to actually give him, it's a nerve where they freeze your nerves so that he is not in so much pain. So it's called
Wow.
cryoablation or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they froze his nerves so that he didn't feel such extensive pain when he came
Wow.
out. And
And
that's
so
supposed
this,
to last for 6 months, but he said it didn't really last that long.
no. So what was your, I mean, your reaction? The surgeon tells you this, and are you freaked out?
No, I'm totally freaked out. I call the prison. Um, I call the prison and I start flipping out on the case manager. And I told her I'm not going to rest until that prison is closed. And I don't care what I have to do to close that prison, but I am going to do it because what they did to my husband and what they're doing to our incarcerated loved ones in that prison, that's not going to be tolerated. And I again started contacting OSI, the commissioner. I contacted Priya, and Jason Effman from Priya confirmed my email. No one else. He confirmed my email and said that his situation was being investigated. And I said, let me explain something to you. My husband is not going to be released out of that hospital back to Marcy Correctional. I'm going to say it again. He is not going to be released back to Marcy. So I put out so many calls. The attorney got involved, Ali Najmi, and they transferred him straight from the hospital to where he is now, 5 Points.
So you had mentioned that you had reached out and you heard back from Priya. So
Mhm.
for those people in the audience who don't know what Priya is, would you mind just a high level summary of what Priya is?
Sure. So it's the prison rape elimination office. So anytime a incarcerated individual, states that he is sexually assaulted, abused, or even, verbally assaulted,
Yeah.
sexually, you contact Priya and, they get involved.
Okay. And so you had mentioned that you reached out to OSI after,
Yes.
and did you get a response back? Was
Nope.
there an investigation done?
No. No.
No,
No,
no, nothing.
they're still investigating. There's an
Oh,
investigation
okay.
done. Whether they are done with it, no, um, uh, I don't think so because after Mr. Brooks passed, I again contacted the OSI, Jason Effman, and I said, "This is on you." I wrote it right on my email. This is
Yeah.
on you because I told you guys what these people were doing at Marcy Correctional and no one did anything about it. And, it's disturbing to know that someone had to die for you guys to get
Yeah.
involved. Someone called me from OSI and said, I'm going to be visiting Juan, to speak to him. They did go. But
Yeah.
apparently it was the same and I'm gonna ask my husband again. But apparently he said it was the same guy that visited him that he got attacked for because he didn't do
Mm,
anything about it. So why would you send the same person that did nothing the first time to go and speak to him? It
yeah.
just doesn't make any sense at all. Like I'm confused. But they
Yeah.
said, don't think that the case is closed. We're still investigating and
Wow.
still waiting.
Oh, wow. So one thing I'd like to do very quickly is just I want to give a special thank you to a contributor. I want to send a special thank you and love to Regan Smith, who just sent a cash out for 20. Regan, thank you so much for helping out with the channel. I greatly appreciate it. For everyone else, if you can please do me a favor, if you can like the live stream, if you can share it, and if you can subscribe if you haven't already done so. For those of you who don't know, this type of content, this type of material is not very popular amongst YouTube. There are many people that have told me I've tried to look you up. I've typed in names of of correction officers or incarcerated individuals, and I have to put you in manually in order to see the content on your channel. So it helps when you share it. It helps when you like it to help with the algorithm, because again, this kind of material is not widely accepted. You know, it's not like I'm covering Karen Reed or I'm covering like a big case or P. Diddy or something like that. So this is really a grassroots type of thing in which you guys have to really help getting the content out there. So I thank you for everyone who has. I thank you immensely. Now let's go back to talk with Marie about Juan. So you mentioned, and again, one thing that you've mentioned in terms of OSI is a joke.
Yes.
I think it's very few people out there that can really say OSI has done good, um, because, for example, in the case of Robert Brooks, one of the OSI investigators was actually a former correction officer at Marcy, who helped with the investigation, who actually knew these correction officers. I believe his name was Ryan Paparella. I actually did a video about that. This is very early on. This is back in January. So OSI is truly a joke, and we know that based on the collective bargaining agreement, these correction officers face no consequences for what they do. Docs can't even terminate them.
Yeah.
So all of these correction officers, right? Their names are very familiar. You have Kessler, Anzalone, Farina. I know for a fact that each one has been involved in multiple civil cases. So these names are not new names that, you know, this was the first time that they decided to beat the crap out of someone. This is common. This is routine. There's nothing new about this. Nothing new about this. So, you know, going back to Juan. So you have this investigation from OSI, which technically you're saying is still pending?
That's what they said. Yeah. They're still investigating, and that's all I heard. They said they would give me a call back. I haven't heard anything about that at all. I still email to try to get updates here and there, so they can still know that this is not just because he's in a different prison doesn't mean that it's over.
No.
I want answers, and I expect answers because someone has to answer, to what happened to him.
So going back to the second meeting, you said it happened on I'm sorry,
9th.
6th, October 9th. He spent 10 days in the hospital. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yes, and then
So,
when he
you
got to
know,
5 points, he spent more time in the infirmary. Yeah.
okay, so he spent 10 days at an outside hospital, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then once he left the hospital, he ended up in the infirmary at the next prison he went to.
Yes. So he was in the hospital from the 9th until October 23rd. And then he got to 5 points. And, when you get to 5 points, especially from the hospital, you have to go and see the nurse. And I know that a lot of people talk about the nurses, but I'm going to say this. Miss Fisher at 5 points was exceptional.
Oh, great.
She was exceptional. She was calling me every day, giving me an update. If he felt some type of way or he didn't want to take his medication, because he was just in too much pain, like he would call me or he would say, "I'm going to call your wife. I have her number." And she was calling me. If I tell you that I've never in the 8 years, and Juan has been to the clinic a lot. Never. They're always nasty. They never want to give you any information, and they don't care how many HIPAAs you have in those files.
Yeah.
Not her. She was very, very attentive, very responsive. Every time I called her, she would answer that phone. She would give me the update for the day. She was exceptional. And she didn't want to release him But he was the only one down there, and it was making him depressed and scared that SEALs would come and beat him again. And so at that point, he was just like, I just want to go upstairs. I just, want to go upstairs. And she was like, I really don't recommend, you going up there. Here, I can see you every day. Over there, I would have to, would have to wait for me to walk the gallery, but incarcerated loved ones are also stubborn at some point as
Yeah.
well. So, and me and his mom was telling him, stay down there, but he refused. So of course he went upstairs. He still suffers a lot of pain. He's, those beds are not made for people with the type of injuries that these people are giving them. Especially him with those broken ribs. He can't climb a top bunk, so you have to kind of negotiate with the bottom bunkie if you get a bunkie in your cell. So it's like it's just not made for those. So he suffers from a lot. He doesn't get any sleep. He's just in panic mode. And now because of the incident, he was supposed to be released on May 21st. That was his conditional release date. And, they reversed one of the tickets, and we're working on them to reverse the other two, which was the 924 and the contraband one, because those were all lies as well. So they reversed the last one, but they didn't reverse the two that led to the last one. And so now he's even in more depressed mode. He's really suffering mentally because he's like, I finally get to go home. I finally get to breathe. These people did a number on me. Like, I just want to go home. And when he found out his date was changed, he's really traumatic about it.
And his date was changed because of these bogus tickets.
Yes.
It's very common. I can't tell you the number of emails I get or posts that I see that you have these correctional officers want to F with somebody and they set them up. They do a bogus, misbehavior report, put them in the shoe to delay their, potential discharge date,
Yes.
release date. So you mentioned that Juan, obviously, well, not obviously, but he's depressed.
He's very depressed. The thing is that he has a final deportation order. I mean, just deport him. Like, that's what he wants. He wants to go back to his country. I don't understand why, after all of this that you've put him through, do you just want to change his date? It just doesn't make sense how the system works. I think that they're meant more to torture you and give you more punishment, and not rehabilitate you for the crime that you committed. They want to be punitive, as more punitive than what you've already received. I mean, Juan received 16 years, for drugs and guns sale, and you know he was 19 when he was incarcerated. Um, he's 35 now.
Yeah.
And he didn't speak too much English. His parents didn't speak too much English, and so his attorneys were telling them whatever they wanted to tell him. And so his assumption was, if he signed final deportation, that he wouldn't have to do all his time in the prison, and that was not the case. I would have definitely told him, "Are you crazy? That is not the case." But we weren't together at that time. But yeah, and so he signed final deportation order, and he's done practically all his time. Yeah, he's about to do his he's done 14 years right now.
Wow. So because of the brutality, because of the beatings, he has an attorney, and there's a federal lawsuit pending, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we know typically these federal lawsuits are years in the making before we see a final, determination or settlement or anything like that. So, I think if anything, what's very important is that people know that what happened to Juan is not uncommon.
Correct.
It's not uncommon. And uh, a lot of the time, these civil lawsuits are not just about money. It's about
Oh
holding people
goodness. Mm-hmm.
accountable, because these correction officers are not held accountable with their employers. They're not held accountable in docks. They're not held accountable legally
No,
because they're committing crimes. They're committing crimes.
correct. Correct. He's when he was, when he was in the hospital, that's what he said. He said, I don't care if it comes out about the SA, I I don't want this to happen to nobody else. Put it
Yeah,
out there, like, put it out there. His sister, after she left the hospital, his sister and his mom drove to the prison and demanded to speak to people. And they were just like, trying to take names, and they're all nervous, acting all nervous. And she's like, give me the paper, I'm going to write it down, because I want you to remember my name, because
yeah,
this is not going to stay like this. But they were nervous because no one at Marcy ever contacted me about anything that happened to him at all. Not even after he left to the hospital. Nothing. So I would have never
hmm,
known had the chief surgeon never called me. I would have had to wait for him to call me, and by then he probably would have been Robert Brooks. Sadly to say, because had they released him back to um, Marcy, they probably would beat him again.
yeah. If you have the opportunity to sit down with Governor Kathy Hochul, what would you say to her, or what would you want her to know?
Um, One thing that I told Sarah Wallace was this: OSI really needs to be an independent agency. It needs to be, derived of people from the community, members of former incarcerated. It doesn't even have to be incarcerated individuals, of former incarcerated people, because this keeps it open for, away from the friendships, or oh, that's my friend, I can't, I have to lie on the report, or whatever, because all these people know each other. So why would
Yeah,
you hire people to be that worked at these prisons, that know these people, that live in the communities that these people live in, and think that they are going to be impartial? They're not.
yeah,
They're not. And OSI has not worked. It just needs to be dismantled, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all.
yeah.
No one
I
here
think
can ever say that it's worked at all.
no, and I think one thing that's my biggest critique of all this is that, if this was you or I doing the same things that these officers are doing to, incarcerated individuals, and we did this at our jobs, we would be in prison.
Yes.
They would throw the book at us.
Yes.
So why aren't these district attorneys investigating, having these individuals arrested? Why are these crimes not treated like crimes? They're criminal acts, and also conspiracies.
Nobody wants to be responsible. That's what it is. Nobody wants to be responsible, and they just sweep everything under the rug. Oh, it didn't happen, or we found this evidence, and it is all evidence that they derived. So
Yeah,
they never want to believe our incarcerated loved ones, and it's sad at this point, because it's so much happening. When Robert Brooks passed, I'm seeing all of these things coming out now. And one thing that I'd like to tell, everyone would have incarcerated individual. I know that sometimes it's scary. It's scary. It was scary for me to voice what had happened to him, just for retaliation. But do you want him to die from them beating him, or do you want to say something? You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, that's what my husband made me promise, that I would do everything that I can to put his story out there. people know this is what happened to him, and don't be scared. You have
Yeah.
to voice, you have to say something, you have to say something. Everyone, I see a lot of people write anonymous, and to each his own. But I want people to know who I want Governor Hoku to know who I am. I want the commissioner to know who I am, the superintendent. I'm always going to write my name. I'm going to write my phone number. I'm going to write my email. Contact me. I'm here. And that's
Yeah.
what I do. And
Yo,
that's what I want everybody to do.
uh, can everyone write Marie in the chat? I think we have to give Marie her props for her courage, for first and foremost for telling her story, for being open about what Juan is going through. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes just a very special spirit to get up, to be on television, to share your story, and to put that out there for the world. You know, basically, evil thrives when good men and women do nothing.
Do nothing.
That's
Correct.
how evil thrives. And the thing is, all these acts that are occurring, they're no longer occurring in darkness. Our job is to bring this to light.
Yeah. Agreed. 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 And this
Okay.
isn't, I just want to say this is an important platform. And, it's important to share, and to put those likes in there. I told, Mr. Feliciano yesterday, like, this is important. And I appreciate him taking the time to do this, because not everyone, would do it. So, I truly appreciate
Oh,
that.
thank you. Thank you. Is there um is there anything else you want the audience out there to know? Anything you want the world to know about Juan, about this case?
Um, just that I'm just asking for prayers. I want to get him home. I want to do anything and everything possible to get him home. Now I know that I may not meet the 521, original conditional release date.
Uh-huh.
But if you know anybody, that could help me, shoot me a DM. I'm on the group. I forgot what it's called, Fred. The federal.
Uh, yeah, New York State docs. You know what?
Yeah,
I will look that up because I
yeah,
also want to give them a special shout out. So yeah, keep talking and I'll find
yeah. And so, and if you have information where I can reach out more and see who else can help me, that that'd be appreciated.
you.
I'm really just trying to get him home. He deserves to be home. He's been through enough, and I don't think that he can make another 2 years in there. I don't.
Wow.
I don't think he would.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, the Facebook group is New York State Docs Federal Oversight. That's the Facebook group.
Yes.
That's a really amazing Facebook group. They have about 1,500 members, most of whom are family members of those incarcerated. It's a great resource for
Fabulous.
anyone who has a loved one, for families. And I would say, if you have a loved one incarcerated in New York State, this is the Facebook group that you want to be a part of, because, knowledge is power. Sharing it, hearing from other families, and then basically you start to see the patterns on the wall, right? You start
Yeah.
to see these things happening, and it's important to learn about what resources are available to you from other families.
No answer stays unanswered in there. So
Yeah,
ask away, and they
yeah,
will answer. And
yeah.
and it's actual information, factual information. So
Yeah, and they do some great work. So I want to give special shout outs to those people. I believe the head of that is Michelle Bonet, who's the executive
yes,
director.
yes.
Michelle Bonet. So okay, all right. Is there anything else? Is there anything else, Marie, you want to say to
No,
the people?
no, no. I'm good.
Okay. All right. All right. So I am going to close the stream. It's 10 o'clock, and just tell everyone, if y'all could do me a favor again, like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, get this message out there. I'm a strong believer that we need to have these platforms where we just don't go over headlines. We actually go deeper and hear stories. right? And listen to the people who are going through this, share their stories. That's the way we, bring this horrible injustice to light.
Yes.
That's the only way. This is the only way. You are the only way, Marie. Everyone who's here in this chat, that's the way. Okay. So again, thank you to all for being here. My goal is to go deeper than what the mainstream media is telling you. Take care, God bless, and see you next time.
Good night,
Bye bye.
everyone.